I'm very happy to be joined here today by Tyler McMurtry with SGI. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Great to be here.
Thank you. Now, over the last month, in October, there was a lot of tickets being given out, specifically impaired driving offenses. Almost 500 tickets were given out just last month. So, tell me a little bit about why that number is significant for Saskatchewan.
Yeah, we did see what we would consider to be a bit of a high number, and that's no pun intended. Even though we were focusing a bit on drug impaired driving with our awareness efforts in October, we did see 201 criminal code charges and 296 administrative suspensions. So the total number of impaired driving offenses, yeah, close to 500. It was 496. 497, I should say. Sorry.
That is a big number, and I just want to kind of focus on the 296 administrative suspensions. For people who don't know what that is, what does it mean when a person is given an administrative suspension?
So these aren't criminal code charges, which are carry more serious consequences, but they do reflect the fact that you have exceeded the legally allowable limits in Saskatchewan for either alcohol or drugs. So police will suspend your driver's license at roadside if you, as an experienced driver, for example, exceed 0.04 blood alcohol content, but are under 0.08. Over 0.08, you'd be looking at a criminal code charge. But still, for this, it's a lesser offense, but still carries some pretty significant penalties. So you've got that 3-day license suspension, and that's for a first offense for an experienced driver. It's actually a longer suspension for a new driver, like a novice or a learner. In addition to that 3-day license suspension, you've also got, for a first offense, a 3-day vehicle impoundment. And so as the registered owner, you would have to pay all the towing and impound fees that go along with that as well. In addition to that, you have a requirement to attend a weekend driving without impairment course. So that's over the course of 2 days. And you do have to pay a fee for that class as well. And on top of all of that, that inconvenience of losing your car, losing your license, having to attend that weekend class, you do receive 4 demerits on your safe driver recognition. So that means either a loss of insurance discounts that you've earned through safe driving, or if you're on the negative side of the scale because you had some previous incidents, that means a additional financial penalty. So that's what all goes along with an administrative suspension. And those consequences increase if you are, as I mentioned, a new driver, or if it's a repeat offense. So when we talk about those 296 suspensions, that's actually something that we've seen an increased number of over the last few years, particularly in 2023. Those numbers have come up. And what's driving that is the increased number of people being caught using cannabis or other drugs after driving. The alcohol numbers have been relatively stable, but we are seeing more people being caught using cannabis. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean more people are using cannabis and then driving. It just means more people are being caught because police have more access to those roadside oral fluid testers, or they are more likely to suspect somebody has been using cannabis and subject them to a standardized field sobriety test. So that's where we're seeing that increase come from.
And that's crazy, especially like you said, it's not a criminal, suspension or, anything that severe, but an administrative suspension still carries a lot of weight with it. And especially if you're a repeat offender. So, is there any plan on how you guys are going to kind of combat that number since it has been rising?
Well, we are doing our best to kind of make people aware of this, and it's something that we have noted, I think, in the media as this trend has kind of increased. We are, of course, always focused very strongly on impaired driving, both in the awareness work that SGI does and on the administrative side as well, but also in our work with law enforcement. And I think we're coming up on the holiday season. Of course, we just launched a new impaired driving awareness campaign, but also it's not just awareness. There's also going to be very strong enforcement, and I think people will see a lot of check stops throughout Saskatchewan, throughout the holiday season, as a very visible reminder that it is not a good idea to drive if you have exceeded the legally allowable limits of alcohol or drugs. I would also remind folks that while when it comes to alcohol, for an experienced driver, the limit is 0.04. But if you're a new driver, it's zero.
Mhm.
And for all drivers for drugs, it's also zero. So if that swab that police use at roadside determines that you've got any cannabis in your system, that means that triggers one of those suspensions. And depending on the level of impairment displayed, it can lead to further investigation that would substantiate a criminal code charge.
For the criminal code offense, what would people be looking at? Because I know there was about you said 201 people were given this over last month. So can we talk about what those offenses are and what they'll be facing once they get that?
Yeah, so we'll talk first about, I guess, is prescribed in federal legislation for a first offense for a exceeding 0.08, for example. It's a minimum $1,000 fine, and it can go depending on the circumstances that can the judge can determine or decide that more punishment is warranted, and it's a maximum of 10 years in prison, and that's just for exceeding 0.08. Now, there are also fines for example, refusing to comply with a request for a sample. Essentially, if a police officer asks you for a breath test, you are required to submit it, and there's a minimum $2,000 fine for not doing so. So actually, the penalty is stronger in that regard. And of course, there are very significant penalties for other impaired driving offenses, particularly impaired driving causing death, impaired driving causing bodily harm, and for impaired driving causing death, the maximum penalty upon conviction is life in prison. So there is a very strong range. Now, provincially, there's also administrative penalties that go along with criminal code convictions as well. Even the charge, actually, once you are charged with a criminal code impaired driving offense, your license is suspended indefinitely until those charges are dealt with, and or you are eligible for ignition interlock. There's also a requirement for a 30-day vehicle impoundment for an initial impaired driving charge, and again, those consequences increase with if it's a repeat offense. So there's a host of other consequences as well, very significant penalties under safe driver recognition. So the total cost, even just financially, you're looking at thousands of dollars for a charge and conviction of a impaired driving offense. One of the things that we talk about these consequences about being caught, but that's actually not the most significant consequences. Obviously, the most significant consequence is the possibility that you might be in a collision that injures or kills yourself or someone else.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I think this is a very important topic for people to realize and to learn more about. So thank you so much.
Abby, it's always great to talk to you, and thanks for the opportunity.